Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to Social Work Week 2025. This is our closing session. We are really happy to see you joining us to Social Work Week, but also this event, Research Spotlight. We hope you have had a fantastic week. We hope you had a great opportunity to connect and learn together across the whole Social Work Week 2025, also part of the World Social Work Day celebration. I can assure you that this session is rich in content, and we hope you are going to find it really helpful. Before I will introduce you to our key speakers, and I can assure you we have a rich group of presenters in this session, allow me just to go through some housekeeping information, and I promise you I'll be very quick. Your privacy is really important to us. By providing personal information such as your name and email address, you have agreed for Social Work England contacting you just for the purposes of event management and evaluation. We have a legal disclaimer, and that means that the views, information and opinions expressed by third parties during the Social Work Week and during this event today are the speaker's own and not necessarily reflect the views of Social Work England. We have not endorsed third-party content, and therefore we don't accept liability. We do have an event etiquette. And this is because we fully acknowledge that the nature of social work, sometimes the content might be presented in this session. I'm going to say will be parts of this session where you might find emotionally triggering information coming in the way. Therefore, please acknowledge that, and please be mindful of this, and please take all the steps required that you look after yourself. This is really important to us. Once again, we hope you're enjoying this session, and we hope that you are going to share your feedback or thoughts with us. And I'm now going to hand over to Rebecca Mulvaney, Senior Policy Manager at Social Work England.
Thanks, Alana. Thanks so much. I'm just going to bring my colleague Aidan onto the screen as well. Thanks so much for joining us, everyone, particularly because it is a Friday afternoon and this is the closing session of Social Work Week, which is super exciting. And colleagues from Social Work England aren't going to talk for too long because we have a absolute host of people waiting to present their research to you, waiting in the sort of Teams green room at the moment. So we've got people from 5 different research projects, which we're going to introduce shortly. But before we got into that, I just wanted to take a moment to reflect on Social Work England's relationship with research and what we're doing in the research space ourselves as a regulator. So I'm Rebecca Mulvaney, and I'm a Senior Policy Manager at Social Work England, and I focus on research and public affairs. And we have a small but very hopefully useful, we like to think, research team at Social Work England. Quite a new team. We've only been together for the past 6 months, and we're getting very excited for the year ahead and what we might do in the research space going forward. So I'm just going to ask my colleague Aidan to introduce himself and give a little bit of an introduction to his background before we give you a quick overview as to what Social Work England is focusing on around research over the next year, and then we'll pass on to our presenters for today.
Thanks, Rebecca. I'll be really brief. Hi, everyone. So my name is Aidan Worsley. As Rebecca said, I'm a new research manager at Social Work England. I do that 3 days a week. 2 days a week, I'm a professor of social work up at the University of Central Lancashire, and I have a long background in being involved in all sorts of different social work research. And it's really good to have everyone here and so many people sort of engaged with this. Research is so important. Obviously, the whole agenda around evidence-based practice and what matters, what works in how we work as social workers is really important. And also checking out that whether what we thought worked or used to work still does indeed. And how some of the emerging issues in social work, AI being a classic example, how do we do research in those areas that gives us as practitioners and us as a disciplinary area in the profession? How do we know what's going on there and what's best for us to do? And I think what's really helpful about what we've got lined up for you today is actually we've got different sort of areas where research is coming from. So obviously we've got academic sort of researchers who are situated in universities and working with others to develop some sort of different sort of knowledge bases, but we've also got practice and practitioner researchers engaged, and all those who have been involved in different forms of co-production to generate a really rounded sort of knowledge. So I'm really excited to hear all the presentations today, and I'm sure you'll enjoy it. And now I'll hand back to Rebecca, who'll say a bit about what we get up to at Social Work England.
Thanks, Aidan. So a lot of the focus of the research that we commission at Social Work England is, focused on our interests as a regulator and the areas that we regulate. So thinking about social work education and training, continuing professional development, fitness to practice, but also thinking about the perceptions of the social work profession and the perceptions of social workers themselves. And over the past few years, we've commissioned a number of pieces of research and worked with different organisations to deliver those sort of reports at the end of those research projects, which we then publish on our website. Some have sort of been translated and then published as academic journal articles, and we also have disseminated and shared research through conferences. So we've commissioned a national scoping review into practice education as an example, and have taken that to a lot of regional and local practice education conferences. There's some recommendations from that research, which we've also shared with government departments and with other organisations. We've also worked with YouGov in the past to run research projects around the perceptions of the social work profession and the perceptions of the public of social work and social workers. And we've also previously commissioned research into social work education and training, particularly the impact of the COVID-19 pandemic on how social work education was delivered during that time. And that piece engaged with practice educators and students as well as academics running social work courses. But at the moment, we have 4 commissions live, actually. It's been a busy time for us in the research space. We've got 2 separate projects that are live at the moment. Both are focused on the emerging use of artificial intelligence in social work education and in social work practice. So we're working with research in practice for one of those pieces, and then we're working with the Open University as well. And that research is hopefully engaging with social workers and practitioners, employers, and also with education providers, as well as with people with lived experience of social work that might be starting to experience the use of AI, in social care more broadly in both an adults and children's and families context. And I think that one of my colleagues is going to drop a link in the chat, hopefully. If you're interested in our work on AI with research and practice, there's a survey live at the moment, and there's also opportunities to engage with focus groups if that's something that you'd be interested in taking part in. We're also working with the University of East Anglia to do some mapping of the practice educator training landscape, looking at the courses that train practice educators, the wide variety of courses, and trying to actually deepen our understanding of the length of those courses, where they're delivered, what kinds of qualifications and awards come out of them is something that we're really interested in. And we've also got quite a large project at the moment focused on the concept of seriousness in fitness to practice, specifically in the context of social work and social care. So when we talk about seriousness, often that's around misconduct and different types of misconduct and how that might be considered as part of a fitness to practice investigation. And there's been a lot of research on this in the health context, so thinking about seriousness for health professionals like nurses and doctors and teachers, but there's a bit of a lack and a gap around similar research looking specifically at social work and social care. So we're hoping to be able to explore that further and fill that gap. But there's also a lot going on for us over the next year. We're developing our research strategy with our new research team in place. We're starting to build relationships externally with social workers and academics who are undertaking research themselves in areas that, we have a mutual interest in. we're trying to do more to share and promote the social work research that is happening externally. And that's an example of this today. And hopefully we'll be able to do more of this going forwards. We will continue to fund research, and we'll also continue to use the research that we commission or the research that we find out there that's been done externally to inform our regulation as well as we move forwards. But on to the main focus of today's session, and the thing that I think you're probably all here for. We've got 5 presentations today, and this is the running order for you, just to give you a bit of a sneak peek. So we're going to have Denise and colleagues from the University of Hertfordshire, who've been exploring social work approaches to death and dying and addressing, 21st century contemporary challenges. And then we're going to move on to Laura and Malcolm and Sally from Goldsmiths University, who are going to talk to us about co-produced training to equip social workers to co-design care with older autistic people, with a focus on building trust and support. And then we'll have Brett, who's come to us from Disability Rights UK and Durham University, on the Moving Social Work campaign and project and some of the research that's informed that work. And then, because it's jam-packed, we've got a lot to share with you. We've got another project which is focused on co-production, the Blackpool Way, Born into Care, from Blackpool Council, from Karen and Michaela. And then finally, we'll close with evaluating the potential of innovative technology to address adult social care and health priorities, from Reading Borough Council, with Kate and Rodrigo. So just a big thank you to everyone that's participating in this session, and to all of you who come to share your time with us.
So Sally and Marva and I are going to tell you a little bit about a network that we're involved in, and it's very much building, I think, on what Aidan was just talking about emerging issues in social work, particularly around death and dying. And I think all of you, as I do, will be hearing on the news different things about assisted dying. So we'll be talking a little bit about that later. But we're going to tell you a bit about our network. We're going to give you some context for the network. And also, crucially, we're going to give you some ideas for joining in as well. So I'm going to hand over to Marva, who's going to ask you to type some things into the chat.
Good afternoon again. Is the chat open, please? Can you please open the chat? All right, so as social workers, we like engagement. So we're asking you to engage with us at this time. Please type in the chat ways in which you think death and dying might be a part of social work. And we will discuss some of those as you type. So yeah, the answers are coming in: end of life care, grief and loss, helping people to adjust, helping grieving families, supporting, oh, they're so fast. Preparing families for grief and loss, contingency planning, choice at end of life. Somebody said suicide as well. Hospital social work, supporting families in time of loss, bereavement support. So yes, some very good responses, supporting end of life care, very good responses, abuses as well. So it's broad and varied. The impact on social work, mental health social work as well, grief, dealing with grief, misadventures, very important and interesting responses. All right, so thank you so very much for engaging and for putting your responses in the chat. We will refer to some of what you have mentioned in our presentation, but you can see from your responses that dying and bereavement has a huge impact on the work that we do as social work practitioners. Next slide, please. So a survey was done pre-COVID in 2018 by the Corp, and they found that on average, persons in the UK will experience a significant bereavement by age 20. So this has implication to children and young persons that we support if it's by age 20. And more than almost half of the persons who are bereaved, it's that they have lost a significant family members or friends. So it's quite close to their heart. And quite interestingly, from that survey, it was discovered that a seventh of those persons who were surveyed, they found that the support network, their persons were not happy to even mention the word death, and that they are not able to offer them the significant support that they need during that time. And this has an implication for us as social work practitioners, because if persons are not finding support in their immediate network, then normally they're going to look to us and other professionals for that support during that significant time of bereavement. Over to you, Denise.
I can see that all the responses are still coming into the chat, which is amazing. And I think that really points up the focus of our network. One of the things that we've been thinking about a lot is, and seeing in the work of students, is that social work education still seems to be quite dominated theoretically by Kubler-Ross. There's been various bits of research into this, so we will still have a lot of students who are talking about the stages. And as cause research shows, these stages were never actually meant to be a kind of endemic way of describing grief processes. And as Aidan said at the beginning, we've got a lot of emerging issues coming through, many of which are being expressed in the chat as I'm watching. So while we think a lot, and quite rightly, about palliative care, end-of-life care, we also want to be thinking about different contexts that death and dying is taking place within social work. One of them, of course, is assisted dying, as I said at the beginning. So there's a lot in the news, there's a lot being debated around assisted dying, and what I keep hearing is a lot of it will involve social workers. So one of the things that we're thinking about in the bit of research that we're doing, that Sally will tell you about in a minute, and in the network that we've formed, is around how do we prepare social work students for what is probable that they're going to be asked to be involved with in terms of multidisciplinary panels for assisted dying. At the moment, these new requirements, the legislation has not been passed yet. It's very likely that it will be. I think it will require renewed education and CPD. So that's another thing that needs to be thought about. And I'm going to hand you over to Marva again to think about another thing that perhaps we don't think about quite enough in social work education at the minute.
Thank you, Denise. So I'm sure that we are quite aware that we are in a multicultural society, and as such, persons have different religious beliefs and cultural beliefs around death, dying, and bereavement. And what we have found is that because of the fact that we have not moved on in terms of our education on how we prepare social work students to deal with bereavement, death, and dying, there is still the predominant Western way of looking at how we manage the process of death, dying, and bereavement. And so we are advocating for that to be changed so that it's more culturally appropriate, because what is appropriate in one culture or in one religion is not appropriate in the other. And we also need to ensure that we are relevant in the support that we offer, and also that we are not we're not oppressive in our practice, but we are anti-oppressive in our practice. So for example, I'm from the Caribbean, and if somebody should pass on for us, then we have quite a long period of mourning, and we have different rituals that we follow. We have what we call a 9-night, for example, that's happened on the 9th night after the person passed, and that is something that is traditional and cultural. In other religious belief or in other cultures, persons are the burial rituals happen immediately after, probably the following day after the person passed on. So it's quite important as social workers that we are quite familiar with these cultural differences so that we can offer the relevant support. Over to you, Denise. Or is it Sally? Sorry.
No, it's me. Then it's Sally. So I think, again, sort of referring back to what Rebecca and Aidan were talking about at the beginning about AI, we also are in a very technologically drenched society as well, and digitalization technology has completely changed a lot of the ways that we mark death. These people in their research, I can't say their names, they dubbed that cyber thanatology, to think about the way in which digital technology now experiences on our impacts on our experience. For example, we have technology that means that deceased people can speak at their own funeral now. You may think, well, what's that got to do with social work? I think at one time we thought social media didn't have much to do with social work. Now we realise how much it does. So these technological advances are really coming through, and we need to be thinking about those again in social education and in practice. So I'm going to hand over to Sally now, who's going to tell you a little bit about our network.
Thanks, Denise. And yeah, just to reiterate that last point there about ubiquity of death and bereavement across social work practice, with loss being such a fundamental experience in everyone we work with. And those cultures extend to the settings in which people are based as well, whether they're in prisons or care homes or schools. All that shapes how a person is invited to engage with death. And as social workers, we very much need to be aware of that. And so as a group, we've come together to think about what can we do, how can we improve this, and have named ourselves very recently the SWAD group, Social Work Approaches to Death and Dying, with the key aim of building a network of social work academics that are interested in the topic of death, dying and bereavement. Initially, our aims is to meet together, to share what we know and where we think we can develop as a profession, that we hope might evolve to a conference or other future events as we learn from each other. We also have the dual aim of influencing the curriculum, building on what Denise and Marva spoke about, recognising that the curriculum is shaped differently according to each institution, but what we know so far is that it's predominantly drawing on kind of a narrow view of death and bereavement. So we've done a little bit of research in relation to that, and we'll pop the link in the chat. So if you're interested in taking part in this, we'd be delighted to have that. But we've done a small scale survey into how death and dying is included in social work curriculum across the UK. We're building the data as we go on, but so far it's very much confirming our initial ideas, is that there's a lack of coherence and kind of systematic inclusion of death and bereavement in pre-qualifying education, and that where it is included, it's usually due to the specific interests of the lecturer. And so learning from those with lived experience or having an interdisciplinary lens is often missing. And it's also showed us that death and bereavement are embedded within theories model, or perhaps a skills day that might look at child bereavement or palliative care, and missing those wider experiences of death and bereavement that we've spoken about today. So we're keen to expand that. We might be missing stuff. Our hypotheses are still could be proven wrong, and we'll post a link in the chat. And if you're interested in filling that in, please do. Denise.
Thank you, Sally. And I think it's also important just to say anecdotally from students too. And as Sally said, we're very much building this data. It's very early research, it's emergent research. But anecdotally, students have said that they haven't felt prepared either for the impact of death and dying in their practice, because as we've said, it's endemic really. And I think the comments in the chat have shown how wide this experience can be. So if you're interested in joining us, and Sally's described very well what we're doing at the moment, this is a new group, it's an emergent group. We're thinking very much about some of the things that we've talked about, but also open to thinking about other things. We have an article in Community Care, the link is there, and the link to our survey is in the article. We can put the link in the chat as well, but you can go to the article and find the link to the survey there. please do feel free to fill in the survey yourself or to share it with your networks. We'd be very interested in hearing from you as well. If you are interested in this area and you think that it's something that you'd like to get involved with, then please do contact us. Our contact details are there.
Hello, everyone. So my name is Dr. Laura Lenria-Comnen, and I am a postdoctoral researcher at Goldsmiths University. And I work on the COAST project, that is Co-Designing Autism Social Work Training project. And the project was funded by Autistica and the NIHR. So the aim of the project was to co-produce training to equip social workers to co-design care for older autistic people. So when I talk about co-designing that care, I'm talking about supporting social workers to work together with older autistic people to co-design their own care and to work together in partnership to build that trust and rapport between them. With me today, we have community researchers Malcolm and Sarah, who were an integral part of the project. And I am only one member of the team. We have academic researchers, we have social workers and social care providers all working together. That means that we work together with older autistic people, with social workers and with social care providers in order to co-design that training to help support social workers who work with older autistic people. But what does that mean for this project? It means that co-production was integral to every single stage of the development of the training. So from the beginning at the conception side, so this project is based on previous research where we interviewed older autistic people and social workers about what they needed to better support older autistic people seeking social care. And they said that there was a gap in the training to kind of better support older autistic people who have that very specific intersectional need of being older and being autistic. And then we developed the proposal together of how to co-design and co-produce that training. And then together we identified gaps and in the existing training and established priorities on how to better support older autistic people seeking social care. And when I'm talking about working together, I mean that we met together in meetings, both in person and online, and we also worked together on shared documents. And this was a triangulation of different views from different groups. So we have the academic researchers, about whom I'm going to tell you at the end. And then we also have a group, an advisory board. So they were two old autistic people, a social worker and a social care provider, who helped steer that project to ensure that the training that we're co-developing together would be valid and workable in the real world. And then we have community research panel. So two of the members are here today. We have Sarah and Malcolm joining us. And the community research panel was made up of older autistic people, social workers and social care providers. And together we really worked on the nitty-gritty of that training we co-developed together. So what the content was going to be, the format and the design to make sure that it was valid and also, as I say, workable in the real world. So it's all very well my telling you about community research involvement and how fantastic it is, but I wanted to let you hear the voices of those autistic older people who were involved themselves. So they gave us their feedback regarding their experience of being a co-researcher on this project and the different ways in which our project benefited from their involvement as co-researchers, and we're going to hear from them now. So what does co-production mean for community researchers? So our community researchers fed this back to us. So we conducted some interviews with them to hear their views, and some of them provided us with written comments that I include over here. So the first one is Donna, and here's what she says. For me, I feel that being involved in co-production means that my authentic autistic voice can be heard. When policies are created without co-production, it's about them, but without them. And then Lee says that if services are staffed with people who are interested in autism and have taken time to learn about the many aspects of it, and they are consistent with how they approach situations and use the correct tools for the job, Life would be better both for the professional and the person at the receiving end. And then we have a short quote from Sarah, who is joining us here today. We are better and our work is better when we work together. And now Sarah is going to tell us a bit more about her thoughts on co-production. I didn't know that she was going to be able to make it today, so we have an audio, but actually we don't need it because Sarah is here to tell us herself.
Yeah, I think the wonderful thing about co-production, including in this project, is we had a diverse range of voices contributing. And so when you're in the meetings, be it virtual or face-to-face, and we're all responding to the points at hand, there's that great sense of diversity, but also togetherness and synergy. And we're always kind of listening and learning and bouncing off each other. So it's a very creative, co-productive process in which we're inspiring each other to develop deeper and further insights. And I think that was true not just for the people with lived experience in the room, but also the professionals. And it really, really does help, I think, for anyone present to be able to benefit from this sharing of experiences, because it helps widen perspectives, everyone's perspectives and understandings of diverse people's experiences of the real world, and if it's different types of structure. And I think it can be a very transformative experience for everyone in either the virtual or the face-to-face room.
Donna reflected on the importance of co-production for herself, for the training we co-produced, and for the wider autistic community. Here's what she had to say. I have been really happy to be part of this co-production because it is not often that anyone asks for my autistic insight. It can be empowering to know that your experiences and insights are helping shape the future for other autistic individuals and may inspire other autistic people to embrace their identity and speak up about their needs and recognise their own strengths. And here is Lee again. Lee said the following regarding the importance of being involved as a co-researcher, both for him and for the project. Malcolm, did you want to read that one? Go ahead.
Yeah, this is what Lee said. He said, as an autistic adult who's had the benefit of working in health and social care for 30 years, I often felt that my experience of dealing with health professionals aligns with those on the receiving end of care and support. And he also added, by including and listening to autistic people, you're providing an opportunity to find solutions that may not have been considered or factored in.
Okay. And this is Alex. Alex is another one of the community researchers, and she told us about the positive impact of being part of the project. Here's what she said. I have been given an opportunity to make good use of my academic and research conducting capabilities, whereas at the same time, I have been very well supported in areas that I find more challenging, such as social communication, organisation, and other aspects of executive function. I am getting an unexpected but also welcome opportunity to feel accepted the way that I am, without being expected to or told or forced to change various neurodivergent aspects of my autistic personality. And what a difference this makes to my mental health. I feel that I can relax and lower my guard. I have finally encountered my tribe, if only for the duration of the project.
And I want to add, and this is my thoughts as Malcolm, it's about having an opportunity to contribute to co-production and its potential to improve services. So I'd said one positive aspect of my involvement has been the opportunity to share and improve services for the autistic community. Being involved has allowed me to alert social workers that there are things that they should never assume. Neurodivergent conditions are complicated, but so often hidden in plain sight. And involving those with lived experience is the key to credibility and not just a box-ticking exercise. It's vital. And by involving those living as autistic people, the project is grounded in our realities. And I wouldn't allow tokenism and wouldn't have taken part if I felt it was being tokenistic.
So those were some of the thoughts that were written and spoken by community researchers involved in the project. And it shows the value of co-production, both for themselves as co-researchers who really learn in the process, and by working together with people maybe they wouldn't have encountered usually, and different groups and from different backgrounds working together, they can really learn from each other. And the project itself benefits, of course, and the training that we're co-creating benefits too. What you see on the screen now is an illustration by Rose, another community researcher. She chose to express her thoughts and feelings this way. And it really shows the breadth of the impact that this can have both on the person and on the project, and it can serve as an example really of the benefits of co-production in your work. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to be quiet now to give yourselves time for reflection and to have a look at the slide and to have a look at the illustration and reflect on your own thoughts about what it contains. So I'm going to leave that for about half a minute or something to give you a bit of time. So now I'm going to tell you a little bit about the project itself and about the training that we've been co-creating. So right at the beginning, I was telling you about the process and about the different phases of the project. So in phase 1, we had the decision. So together we decided on where the gaps were in the training, what might be needed to better support older autistic people seeking support from social care. And then in the next phase, we co-created that training. So having decided on some of the content, having decided on the design and the format of this, we then worked together to co-create the first iteration of the package. And the next step, of course, which is the one where we are now, and I'm going to tell you a little bit more about this in a minute, is the evaluation of that training, which is essential. Because co-production is always an iterative process. So every step we reevaluate, we think again, we go back to the community researchers and the community to find out, is this still okay? Are we going in the right direction? Are we doing what's necessary to help support social workers in building that rapport and that trust? So this is the first iteration of our training. It targets 2 interrelated elements. The first is knowledge and understanding of how to better support older autistic people. And then the next bit is that building of that trust and rapport between the service, really, rather than individual social workers and the older autistic person. And we're going to be doing, well, we have done this through podcasts and materials such as information sheet to accompany them. We chose podcasts because our community researchers, social workers, told us actually they wanted something that they could come back to time and again, and that could be easily integrated into their working life. And then we also have templates and resources. So this is about sharing information and sharing expertise and knowledge in each other. So we've included checklists and pre-meeting questionnaires for social workers and older autistic people. And as I mentioned, the next step is the evaluation. And this is the final phase that we're entering now with our project. So we're seeking feedback on the material we've co-developed, and we will then be piloting that training package and evaluating it in terms of intention to practice and also in terms of impact on practice. And here's where we would welcome your input. So if you want to be involved, you could give us some feedback on the resources we have co-produced via a survey. If you want to find out more about completing the training itself and providing an evaluation of it, then you can complete an expression of interest form. And then if you want to find out more about the project, we have a website, or you can email us at coast@gold.ac.uk. And we have some QR codes for this here. And then finally, as I mentioned, I'm only one, and Sarah and Malcolm, we are only 3 of quite a wide team, including an academic research team. So I'm Dr. Laura Lenyu-Cumnen, and Professor Rebecca Charlton and Professor Mary Stewart are the co-leads on this project. Then we have Dr. Katrina Stewart and Dr. Philip Heslop in this on the team, and other members of the team include Professor Kate Sang and Dante Mariu, who is a social worker based at Goldsmiths as well.
Thank you, and what an amazing week. Great to have me here and the rest of my colleagues. My name's Brett. I'm a professor at Durham University and I work alongside, and the project Moving Social Work is a partner with Disability Rights UK, and Disability Rights UK have been at the forefront of advancing this, I should stress, along with co-production colleagues for the last 4 to 5 years, including several people that I've witnessed in the chat. So thanks to those. But let me begin at the beginning in terms of moving social work, and then secondly, move into one of the new components of moving social work, some preliminary new evidence that we're very excited about. This work has been funded by the National Institute of Health Research and more recently as well Sport England. And the origins of moving social work stem way back when disability rights and ourselves had highlighted the significance of social workers in the physical activity space. And that was new at the time, and it is still new now. And we identified 3 key reasons why disabled people said they wanted rich conversations with social workers about moving a little bit more. Social workers were identified as important messengers of physical activity because 1, they were highly trusted groups of people. Second, unlike many healthcare professionals, of course, social workers adopt a social model view of disability. And that was incredibly important, of course, for disabled people in this space. It also separated you and distinguished you from the healthcare profession, of course, and elevated you in this space. And third, but by no means least, disabled people also identified social workers as really important people in terms of having conversations about moving more, because you understand people's local communities. You understand the inequities that are going on in society and sadly just being amplified. And it's those individuals who face great inequities who are, number 1, have the lowest forms of physical activity, but number 2, continuously express they want to be more active through richer conversations with, for example, social workers. So with that in place, we then ask the question, is the training for social workers? Are social workers already doing this? What's going on in this space? We worked with Social Work England's representative, Catherine Witt, for over a year, asking social workers questions about movement, physical activity, do they have conversations? And the long and short of the initial research found, 1, social workers were very interested in moving social work for 2 key reasons. 1, it could be an opportunity to support the Care Act in different ways. We know that physical activity is a great opportunity to improve well-being. The evidence has been there for a long time. But second, and very uniquely, and it is now changing the physical activity landscape in the UK and worldwide as a result of social workers. Social workers talked about physical activity as an opportunity, as a springboard, a bridge to think differently about social justice and about human rights. Not least, physical activity is a form of human right, but also it's an opportunity to think about social justice in different ways. I could give you numerous examples of how social workers have creatively utilised conversations about movement to support people's not just well-being, but in addition, forms of social justice. But unsurprisingly, perhaps, what social workers also expressed was they lacked the knowledge, the confidence and the skills to have these conversations. The vast majority of social workers told us this in the research. And what they therefore called for was 1, co-produced an evidence-based training to be embedded in university courses, and 2, for social workers of today being trained in how we can have richer conversations about physical activity for well-being and social justice through CPD training. We've delivered CPD training and in universities now for nearly 2 years. We've trained well close to nearly 2,000 social workers in this space. The evaluation has been incredibly positive, and several things that I just wish to highlight. Number one, social workers have stressed that this is transferable. This isn't just an opportunity to have conversations about moving a little bit more for well-being and social justice in terms of disabled people. They also said that this equips social workers to meet a variety of challenges. This include how we could utilise moving a little bit more in regards to substance misuse, trauma and bereavement, mental health, of course, loneliness, improving people's confidence. And they talked about this as a preventative opportunity in this space, and also another great opportunity to practice strength-based and relationship-based practice. But what they also said was it gave them food for thought about their own movement. And during the evaluation and the qualitative part in particular, they gave us numerous examples of this. And if I can just give you one quote that exemplifies many observations from social workers, this went as follows. Moving social work has been incredibly useful. It's really improved my practice, but also it's made me reflect on my movement, especially at work. The more I reflected, the more horrified I became. I hardly move. I know I'm not an exception. It's the same with most of our team. It's the social work culture. This must change. We can't go on like this. What about our own well-being? That made us think, well, what about these conversations whilst they're directing outwards into the communities? What about social workers themselves? So in January, we took the decision working with the co-production groups and various individuals to set up a new project within Moving Social Work to explore this. We found, number one, there was a lack of research in general on practicing self-care at work through systematic reviews. And secondly, the work that was being done predominantly, at least from the research perspective, nearly always attends to mindfulness. At the same time, all of this research was calling for broader ways in which we could understand how we can support social workers' well-being at work. Of course, one of those possibly could be movement. So we asked questions. We had set up several focus groups as identified by different social workers as a useful way to start understanding what social workers do during work or not do. We worked with social workers to create an interview guide. We paid social workers to be co-researchers with us to do some of the focus groups and to lead on some of the analysis. And thus far, we've interviewed well over 100 social workers. And I'd just like to offer some hot off the press themes, some of the things that we've been able to identify through the Moving Social Work project. The first one is physical activity at work is an urgent priority. It's an urgent priority, but we don't have the time to know what to do. This is exemplified in this one quote. Moving at work should be a priority. It's an urgent priority, but it's not something we do or think about though. This shouldn't be left as a luxury though. It's a real priority for social work, but I wouldn't know where to begin. I don't even have the time to do my job, let alone think about how I can move more at work. I'm just not sure what I could do to move more at work, even though it's so important. Can you help us? The second theme identified was that physical activity would be beneficial for my personal health and well-being, our working environment, and our practice. This is exemplified in the following quote. And again, I could offer many of these through the many people we've spoken to. If we were more active at work, that would positively impact on our stress levels, high levels of burnout, high levels of staff leaving the post, retention issues. But it's so much more than that. It's a great way to improve our physical health and well-being. And yes, this is about prevention. And it feeds into your personal life too, and your ability to manage your work-life balance. Movement should be treated as a priority because of the positive effect it can have, not just within our communities, but also on us. And this extends in so many places. If I can't take care of myself, how am I supposed to do my work? How am I supposed to do the best job I can if my health and well-being is so poor? I really do need to move more at work. The less you move, the less you want to. Yet we are no good to ourselves, anyone, our service users included, if we can't take care of ourselves. And being active is one way, just one way, but an important way to support this. It would be a win for us and surely our service users if we could move more at work. So our third theme is moving more often at work is wanted and is possible. As one social worker said, I used to smoke 60 cigarettes a day and hated exercise, but I knew I needed to change. I found I really enjoy swimming and walking. I love walking my dog, and I make sure now I move at work rather than being tied to my desk all day, sat on my bum. I do lots of small things throughout the day and try to get a walk in a few times a week with a few colleagues. Not enough of our team move though. That was the same in my past job. The culture of social work is one where we sit, miss lunch, tap away on our computers, or are always on Teams calls, and we don't look after ourselves. I could go on. I was burnt out, grumpy, close to leaving. I wouldn't go as far as saying that physical activity alone saved me. There are lots to me being happier, but certainly being more active at work has helped massively. I'd recommend it to social workers. Yes, well-being at work is just too often in policy, but not in practice. We need a better culture, and that means good leadership, permission to move from them, and fun options we can realistically do. Sadly, individuals like that were in the minority. The vast majority of social workers identified multiple barriers that restrict moving at work. That's theme 4. Multiple barriers restrict movement at work. And just to offer one example, where do I start on why I don't move at work? Time, of course, is one. There's also always so much to do. I feel guilty too if I'm not sat working. It's the culture of social work, and that isn't helped with Teams and home working since COVID. If I'm not on red, on Teams of course, I get really worried that my manager will think I'm not working. I know others have that fear too. I feel fearful, and no one, our leadership team, gives me permission to take time away and move, even if it's for 5 minutes. It's the norm not to move. Be on your laptop, at the desk, in the car, to have working lunches. I say lunch because I often don't have one. So, and not just in the place that I work, I think social work as a whole is more reactive than proactive and needs to be more preventative driven, including for ourselves. In terms of promoting health and well-being at work, we don't do a good job at all. It needs to change. And one good way of doing this without romanticizing it is to being a little bit more active at work. So the long and short message is that moving social work is about having rich conversations with service users about moving more, not just for well-being, but also as an opportunity to uphold social justice. If anybody would like that training, we're very happy to deliver that for free. But equally important, don't forget yourselves. Please don't. I'm not a social worker. I've been in the health space for a long time. But I could honestly say, having witnessed the great work you do and the uniqueness of what you do, that uniqueness, that difference really does make a difference. And we're certainly finding that in the physical activity, social justice and well-being space. So thank you for everything that you do for our communities. You're an amazing group of professionals. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Michaela Goodridge. I am co-production delivery lead for the co-production team at Blackpool Council.
My name is Karen Andrews. I'm the senior practice development leader for Blackpool Children's Services.
So we're going to just talk to you a little bit about our co-production journey in Blackpool and give you a couple of practice examples of where we have co-produced within our children's services. So as a lot of you have said already this afternoon, co-production is very much a way of working with the belief that people who have experienced a problem should be involved in creating the solutions to those problems. And that for us includes community members, parents, young people, adults, as well as and equally our workforce. So what do we mean when we talk about co-production in Blackpool? So we think about it in terms of sharing responsibility, sharing learning, sharing experiences, and ultimately sharing the power in making decisions that create changes in our services. What we've learned over the past 8 to 10 years that we've been co-producing in Blackpool is that it becomes our way of doing things, and that leads to meaningful and sustainable changes. We put a lot of emphasis on building positive relationships based on trust and respect and understanding of each other. And we have toyed between this idea of co-production and consultation. And what we've learned is that these two things go hand in hand. As a few of you have said, we have representatives from across the community and our workforces as part of co-production projects. However, consultation for the wider community forms part of that. It gives us a deeper understanding of problems. We get to understand each other. And there's particularly one thing that stands out for me when community members and people who work within services and systems come together and get a real feel for what it is like for each other. We understand that it gets to the heart of the matter and that it is about a hearts and minds experience for people. And that is what we talk about when we think about culture change. It isn't just about co-producing one single project, but actually co-producing everything that we do. So when we talk about, and I think a few of you have talked about this afternoon, about involving the community in the work that we do, we employ our experts by experience at Blackpool Council who are meaningfully involved in our co-production projects. But when we talk about consultation, part of our governance structures include things like our parent advisory group, as you can see here, a wonderful group of parents who inform all of our co-production work across Blackpool Children's Services, and particularly what we're going to talk to you about is our Born into Care work and our Blackpool Families Rock. So we talk about it when we talk about a culture, we're thinking about how we work systemically and how we create socially just systemic change. We know that it takes time and it takes a lot of resource to be able to do this, but what we know is that the results can then stick. We talk about it in terms of how we get the beat of the system. So what do we know about the system already? What do we focus on? Let's think about the facts. And what happens if we don't change anything? What do we know is already working well, and what are some of those challenges, and how can we build on that? We have this term that we say that we can't control systems, but we can only learn to dance with them.
So for us in Blackpool, in 2019, we started to co-produce a model of practice, and this was following on from our Ofsted inspection in 2018. Where we were asked to think about a model of practice. And in Blackpool, we're very unique and we don't always want to do everything off the shelf. So we co-produced this kind of model of practice, and essentially it brought families together, it brought the workers together, it brought everybody from that different points in the community together to think about how do we want to work together and with each other as well. So they spent a lot of time thinking about the values that are part of when we work with each other. What does that look like? What does it feel like? And they came up with a set of values that link into social pedagogy. So social pedagogy talks about your head, your heart and your hands. But in Blackpool, we lead with our heart. And these are the values that the co-production group came up with. And these are still the same ones that were produced in 2019. We have not changed them at all. And as you can see there from some of them values, it's why a lot of, it's why we came into the job that we do, why we came into this caring profession, because we want to build trusting relationships. We want to be kind. We want to not give up on people and share our power. We want to share our knowledge. We want to take care in how we write and talk about people and be non-judgmental. We want to see people's strengths, be clear with people, get to know people that we're working with, and celebrate them positive changes as well. And what we always say, it's not about how we work with families in Blackpool, but it's how we work with each other as well. So we link very much to kind of, they are values, these are our practice principles. So our heart is how we behave, so how we are inclusive, how we are kind, how we are positive. Our hand is how we work, so we work restoratively, and our head, is how we think. So thinking about how we work with families and we don't do to them. So Blackpool Families Rock, we launched that back in end of 2019, 2020, and it's been ever evolving as over the years, over the kind of 8 years that we've kind of put this into place. And it is our overarching framework. It's not what we call now a model of practice, it's our ethos. This is who we are in Blackpool. And we are award winning in 2023. We won a Frontline Award for the work. And part of Born into Care is an example of how we have used Blackpool Families Rock and start to co-produce some of them changes.
So we just wanted to share with you a bit of information about Blackpool Family, about Born into Care, and about how we became involved in that. So Blackpool, in 2019, Blackpool became one of the 10 pilot sites for the National Born into Care research conducted by Lancaster University and the Nuffield Family Justice Observatory. And what you can see on the screen now is a funnel plot graph, which is why we got involved in the first place. So what you can see here is the rate of newborn infants entering care proceedings within the first week of life per 10,000 live births. And the light blue dots that you can see on the screen are the northwest, and that one that's circled at the top there is Blackpool. So the journey we've been on so far has been a vast one. So like I said, we were part of the research from 2019, and in 2021, along with the development of the new national guidelines when the state intervenes at birth, Blackpool decided to take the national findings and co-produce the local response. So we worked with, we had 2 initial co-production groups, one for mothers and one for fathers, including our midwives, social workers, local organisations, research academics, because we wanted to understand what was happening in Blackpool and why Blackpool were removing high numbers of babies. So we set about thinking about what some of our issues were and what some of the problems were, and again building on the relationships between our parents and our services. We developed a steering group which is chaired by our Director of Children's Services, and that steering group would oversee all of the work over the next few years. We've co-produced a theory of change, we've completed a data audit, and we have also co-produced resources, and we're now in an implementation stage around what support looks like for families going through the recurrent care process. So what the data showed us was that of those children between the ages of 0 to 18, who were coming into our care, were 30% of those were under 12 months of age. What we also understood was that 39% of mothers and 28% of fathers had a documented or reported learning need at the time of assessment. What you can see on the screen in front of you is a co-produced resource that was co-designed and co-produced along with Lancaster University with for parents. Parents told us that the children's social care system was so complex that it was so difficult to understand that they were unable to navigate it, and just created so much fear around the system and the services that were supposed to be providing support for them. So there's a series of three resources, a smaller condensed version of a map, or what we're calling our family's journey, an interim one where there's a little bit more detail, and then a larger document that has all the details of each step of this process or this journey. And we've written that in language that is understandable. We've made that relevant to Blackpool, as you can see with the symbols that are on the screen. And what the impact of this has been is that families told us that not only did this support them through their journey, but also the therapeutic element whereby they were able to understand that journey that they'd been on. As well as our practitioners also told us that this was a really useful resource for them as well, not only in them understanding the system, but equally being able to be consistent with the support that we provided. And I know myself as a social worker that had I had this resource when I was newly qualified, I think this would have been really helpful.
So with regards to kind of co-production in Blackpool and what we think makes a difference, we know that it needs to come from the top. It needs to be led by that senior leadership. And we're really lucky in Blackpool that all of our senior leaders are really invested in co-production. We wouldn't have got as far as we had done without them. It really, what we always say, there's nothing about us without us, nothing about without us. And that's really kind of important. It really kind of what really makes that difference is that we have them opportunities to continue to build trusting and meaning relationships between families and practitioners and leaders. Co-production for us in Blackpool is something that we live and breathe. Everything that we do is co-production, and that is not necessarily always thinking about involving families in what we're doing, but making sure that we're involving the workforce in what we're doing. We have very clear and simple aims, so it gives that whole town approach to co-production and it brings that system together. We run co-production workshops and community of practices, and that goes out to the whole community. So it really does build them relationships. And as I say, it nurtures the kind of relationships across, not only within the council, but with our partner agencies as well. And we always talk about go where the energy is. When you're looking to kind of co-produce something, and we know that there's a problem there, we've identified the problem, we're bringing people together to think about how we can address that and what we're going to do next. We go where the energy is, go where the people really want co-production and go from there. And we see that ripple out from where we started back in 2019 to where we are now is unbelievable. So thank you very much for listening. You can see there we've got a little QR code that takes us through into kind of our co-production website as well. And I think just on the next slide is just some links to some of the stuff that we've talked about. But the map is available on our co-production website as well.
Thank you very much.
I'm from Reading Borough Council, and we're going to be talking about evaluating the potential of innovative technology to address adult social care and health priorities in Reading, the work that we've been doing. So I'm Kate Wigley. I'm a transformation project manager in adult social care at Reading Borough Council, and I'm joined by Dr. Rodrigo Perez Vega, who's an associate professor at Henley Business School, which is part of the University of Reading. So we wanted to talk to you about the work that Reading's been trialling, and we've been trialling and evaluating the impact of pattern of life sensor technology. So we're going to share the process and the progress and some of the learning so far. So in terms of the adult social care context, in Reading, we have an increasing older population. Currently, at around 16.8% of our population are older people, and that will be rising to around 23% by 2043. Around 60% of adult service users in Reading are over the age of 60, and 13% of all Reading residents have a life-limiting long-term illness. Annually, about 1,000 people over the age of 65 are admitted to our main hospital with a hip fracture following a fall. And I'm sure those are sort of familiar statistics to a lot of you. So we wanted to try and address these challenges in Reading, and also the general challenges that, for example, a third of people over the age of 60 are admitted to hospital and never regain their level of independence after a fall, and then a further third are unable to move back home again. Also, a recent study identified that 80% of older people expressed their desire to age in place. So in other words, to actually remain in the community and try and maintain as much independence as possible. So in order to try and address these challenges, we wanted to trial the potential impact of digital solutions. So we did a small pilot in 2023 where we did a procurement exercise, and then we worked with two providers. One is House and the other is Lily. We chose to work with two providers at the time because one of them had a friends and family app, which I'll talk about in a bit, and the other didn't. They both have them now, but that was gave us an opportunity to trial two different systems. Then in June of 2023, NHS England put out the opportunity for funding to trial innovative care technology solutions, and the tech needed to support enhanced lives through sustained or increased independence and a sense of well-being, safety and security. So that fitted in perfectly with what the pilot that we'd been delivering. And in October 2023, we were awarded just over £1 million by NHS England Digitising Social Care to upscale the pilot. So we carried out another procurement exercise, but we continued to work with House and Lily, and also two app providers. So we've been working with Autonomy, which is an app-based system to support particularly people with learning disabilities to gain or to evaluate their level of independence, but also to help support them hopefully to become more independent through videos on the system. And Brain in Hand, which is an app for people to support when they're struggling with their mental health, and to help them plan their day and find solutions for crises. And part of the funding requirement from NHS England was that we would have an external evaluator, and we've partnered up with University of Reading. So in terms of delivering the project, we carried out the procurement for the providers. We recruited a project team in the first few months, and then we created referral pathways, and we created a dedicated workflow on our service user database. We use Mosaic, which probably some of you are familiar with. We have a project team in Reading Council, quite a small project team. We had two tech care coordinators, we have a senior social worker involved. Previously, we had a senior OT, so that was really good to get different perspectives. And we have a business systems analyst who manages all our data, and I'm the project manager. So the pattern of life systems use AI and what's called machine learning, and they build a picture of what is normal for a service for somebody in their household. So the kit has a central hub, and it's got motion and temperature sensors. There's typically 6 to 8 sensors in the kit, and they capture activity in someone's home. It's like general movement, sleeping patterns, kettle and fridge usage, bathroom activity. It takes about 20 to 30 minutes to install the kit, and we ask for people to sign a consent form, but of course, if that's not possible, a mental capacity assessment could be considered. So the kit, the sensors are placed around somebody's home, and there's an initial learning period of around 7 to 14 days for the system to pick up what is that person's usual pattern of life. All the data is stored in the cloud, And practitioners can view the data via a dashboard, which I'll show you in a minute. And there's also the option for friends and family, if the service user with the kit nominates someone, they can access the data via an app. So this is just an example of what the kit looks like. So this is the House kit on the left and the Lily kit on the right. And the systems, they can track movement around someone's home, so they get an idea of sustenance, of bathroom activity, of nighttime activity, the temperature of the home, can identify people's sleeping patterns and their level of independence. The aim, we wanted to test whether they can support preemptive and preventative monitoring and reporting, and help to manage risk in a safe way, and also to provide information to multidisciplinary team meetings or to funding panels, and hopefully offer peace of mind, particularly to friends and family who might live far away, or certainly not in the property with the service user. And they can support reviews and right-sized packages of care, and also support the decision-making process. The system, we haven't used it as an emergency response system. It's used retrospectively, and it's not been used for crisis management situations. But the project was open to all service users in adult social care in Reading at any point of their journey in adult social care. Ideally, there would not be more than 2 people living in the home, because then there's a lot of data to unpick. And ideally, someone who's relatively stable, who might have a review coming up, and people who can mobilise independently. Could be with aids, with a wheelchair, but where they're able to mobilise. And service users must sign a consent form at the time of installation, but if that's not possible, we can completed mental capacity assessments, and that's been followed often by a best interest decision. So this is an example of what the dashboards look like for a practitioner who would log into the system. It can look a bit overwhelming at first, but once you get your eye in, it's easy to navigate. So this dial is from the House system. The top is midnight and the bottom is midday. So on the right hand side you see the activity during the night time and early morning, and then on the left hand side it's up to midnight, and all the different sensors are on for this example, and the middlemost circle is the furthest away date, and then the circles go day by day as you go out to the outermost circle, which is the most recent date. So what you can do with the system is that you can isolate the different sensors. So this is an example of the main door sensor. So these pink dots around the left hand side are showing when the main door was triggered, and this is an example where we've been reassured that the person is sleeping through the night. They're not using their front door, and there aren't people coming in and out of the property at night time. So that's an example of how we might how you can interpret the data. The Lily dashboard, for example, we have this event log. On the left hand side it shows the different sensors. And for example, we can see there's been lots of movement during the night, but that movement's confined to the bedroom. So these are a couple of examples of how you different people's patterns of life can give you information that can support care planning. And this is another example from the Lily dashboard, a month view of somebody's night activity, and you can show you, for example, that it's 10% increased on the previous month. And so I'm going to hand over to Rodrigo to talk through the evaluation process.
So the idea of the evaluation was to assess the impact, scalability, but we were looking at different stakeholders. So when we were speaking about impact, and I'll show you in a minute, we were not only looking at service users, but we also want to see what were the perceptions of family members and also practitioners that had to use the technology. We were also looking to evaluate the cost effectiveness and the potential financial savings or cost avoidance, and also for future projects to try to understand user engagement, adoptions, and possible barriers and enablers to uptake. Just move to the next one. We engage in both quantitative and qualitative data collection with service users, family members, and practitioners. And you can see that for service users and family members, we had 3 points of data collection. 1 at the time of installation, T1 3 months after, and then T2 6 months after as well. In order to be able to compare the findings from these projects with other studies that have been conducted both in the UK and internationally, we use validated scales, which you can see there around technology acceptance, quality of life, Quest 2 related to AAL technologies, privacy concerns, and caregiver strain. Overall, as I said, we were trying to capture how service users and family members felt about the technology and the impact that it was having in their lives. We were also looking at the level of satisfaction with the technology and any changes in their quality of life and care responsibilities as a result of using the technology. We were also trying to understand what were the concerns around privacy and whether kind of the communication that we're receiving from the council and the tech providers was sufficient for them to feel comfortable with the technology, because obviously, as you can see, there's a lot of information that can be viewed in the little dashboards. And finally, we were also interested in their quality of life.
Thank you. So I've got some case studies, but I think the slides will be shared afterwards, so I won't go through them. Just to say, the current position is that we've installed the kit into 130 people's homes. The project is wrapping up at the end of March, but we'll obviously be pulling together all the benefits and the financial evaluation to present to NHS England at the end of August. And included is some learning and some findings that you can have a look at, because I know we're running out of time, but the tech has been used to monitor people's risk level through comparison against their baseline. We've identified the priority of risk, for example, people on the waiting list, if their priority can be, if their priority needs to be increased or can be reduced. It's helped with insights in terms of Care Act assessments or identifying where people haven't needed a Care Act assessment. And also it's supported us to verify or contradict assumptions, particularly when someone is not on site, like, for example, during the night when staff members aren't there. So over to Rodrigo.
Yeah, I guess just to wrap up, overall, we have very preliminary findings, but there is a sense of security, right, by having those sensors. And I think more interestingly, from the social care perspective or adult social care, practitioners, they have expressed that they find it useful, right, because obviously they get access to real time or more accurate information about how a service user is behaving at home. And also they have found that helpful to design the more appropriate package of care.
Just wanted to say thanks to everyone, and I hope you've enjoyed this social work week, and we look forward to seeing you again next year, if not before.